the last. And also to be mindful of your time, I think it's going to be shorter. So it was initially 30 minutes. Let's see how much I can talk about it. And the idea is that the first part should be kind of like in the morning was a little bit looking back, and now we would like to look forward. Right? We would like to see, hey, what comes next? And again, I struggled a bit with this keynote format where it has to be more high level and inspirational. I would really appreciate feedback in any way or form if that actually happens or it's maybe too high level. But let's see how it works. So after we kind of talked about how we got here, what does it mean here? And to be honest, there's more than 12 parallel machine learning initiatives. A lot of you have asked me or asked directly or indirectly, hey, can I be part of it? We are doing so many things at the moment regarding this. Some of them are in the customer data area, some of them are in product, some of them are in actually all of our businesses. And if you see the deep dives, you saw the deep dives, you saw that they're very different. So if you want to be part of that, be sure that you reach either to the people that presented, either to me, either to different people. There's a machine learning or data-driven initiatives channel or group or team on Teams. It's supposedly open, but it's very complicated in Teams to join things that are open. So if you know where the search field is, you can actually find it. It's called data-driven initiatives, and you can join that, and there's articles that all of these initiatives and so on and so forth. So one thing that I'm really happy is to see this community growing up. I think Haufe in particular is a company that fosters these communities. And I'm really happy to see that coming into age and that people talk about those things. A couple of days ago, we had a new initiative, and then Marco talked to the people that did the machine learning lab, and they already, some of them say, hey, we want to go into this. So it's really something that works. I think, as in everything, it's also something that stresses, in a way, people, in the sense that there are people that want to leave their current projects and pursue this. I think that's also something we need to deal with, and we need to foster more, or we need to understand, or we need to give them the opportunity to also pursue this new initiatives. The other thing that I think we're better at, we're faster iterating through them. I think the initial initiatives that we had were quite slow in going from an idea to a version 1 or to a first iteration. And there is always this saying that in the AI space, you always need at least 3 iterations to start really seeing some value. The first 2 are not going to be the greatest. And the faster you get there, the better it's going to be, because it allows you to learn and to collect different kind of data and to retrain and to do all of those things. So what I'm seeing, at least, is that all the new initiatives that are coming are more pragmatic. I'm going to speak about that in a second. I'm also happy of the data engineering team, the new data engineering team, right? Not to really careful. You know, obviously we have a data warehouse now. We have a data lake, but we will have a data lake, and this team has really, I mean, a small team with very little experience on how to build something like this. I'm really happy to see and to see that they are going to have a first version very soon. And especially, what you have to understand is that in Haufe Group we don't have the best experience and we don't have the best track record when it comes to infrastructure projects. Those are always challenged, right? It seems like it's always big, it's always complicated, and it's always this IT people driving business in a way, right? And you shove down the business's throat this big system. So that's kind of the picture I always have when I have to pitch something like this. So what we said is that let's try to build a data lake in a different way, that we can go more vertical, and we could show that in a couple of months we can build that infrastructure, but we can also provide already support for either machine learning teams or analytic teams. So that is extremely challenging to do, because there is a lot of this commodity thing that you have to have before. So always balancing it, having just enough so that you can already have enough value. And I'm really happy to see that probably in the next 2 or 3 months we're going to have that, and proving me right. I think in a way the biggest impact of the last 9 months were these 25 new machine learning engineers that we have in our organization. I mean, yes, they're not experts, but they're people who push this, right? It's not just a CTO thing or a business thing or that. It already seeds in our organization. I'm happy to see that even if they stay in their current projects, they're able to act locally and say, hey, maybe in my product there were a few ideas where I can use this machine learning stuff and I can do some very pragmatic things. And to see that happening locally versus somehow we have to steer it from a top, that's awesome. The stretch goal, I think, would be to have this 10%. Well, I can't really say how many engineers we have in Haufe Group. I think no one really knows. We have, I think we have about 400. So having 40 or having 10% of our workforce that can feel confident starting on this path, it is, I think, for a company of our size, extremely ambitious. So, yeah, but not looking at today, but looking in the future, what is machine learning and why do we do this, right? And I found this quote, and machine learning was seen for a lot of time as a competitive advantage, right? You say, hey, this is something that will bring us the edge. The reality now that in a lot of our product and product development is a competitive necessity. You don't get through the door unless you say something about it. If you go to sales and you go to talking to new customers, they ask you about it, right? They tell you your competitors have it. So it's no longer this, oh, I have this piece of gold in my hand that nobody has. If you don't have it, you start getting into trouble. And then a lot of companies cheat to say that they do. There's always a certain amount of pragmatism, or there's a certain amount of maybe sales in the sales cycle. But the reality is that we have to get real with it and we have to get better at it. Not just in our business processes. There are areas where we do a better job. Marketing, you probably saw, and so on and so forth. What we have to do, we have to accelerate that adoption into our products as well. Yeah. So, keeping that in mind, and keeping that we had this, the bottom of the iceberg view in mind, what we have to do is we have to do the last mile as well, right? We have to refocus back on the top of the iceberg, and we have to look at, hey, how do we accelerate those things? So I'm going to give you 3 stories. In my defense, they are without project names. Some of you might find themselves in those stories. So remember these 3 layers and how you build them, and I think we've made certain experiences by building in all 3 layers. And there was one initiative that started at the bottom, and it lasted 6 months to get to this first iteration. And there was a lot of investment in what we call commodity software. So we built a lot of infrastructure in there. We made a lot of clusters and stuff like that to do all of this. And then the data team or the machine learning team was outside of the product team as well. So what happened that they become like 2 silos fighting. Oh, we don't have the data. Oh, you need to change something in your product, and so on and so forth. So this, in the end, led to a very late first iteration in 6 months, which we probably figured out after those 6 months we needed a different kind of data. And it's a little bit stuck at the moment because we don't really see a way forward. So I'm not saying that if we have done it on AWS or used everything would have been better. We probably would have figured that out earlier. One thing that you have to know is all of these initiatives, they are called experiments, and they are called experiments for a reason. Some experiments will work, some experiments will fail. The question is how many of them can you afford, and how fast do you have feedback? So you normally want a faster feedback. The second initiative, there are actually more of them. I think more and more machine learning engineers, especially I think now a bit opinionated about AWS. They start on this path, and there is this more or less of a full stack team when you have those skills inside of your team. And I have one example here. Again, I don't want to give project names, but there's one example that, and maybe or maybe not, you have seen it today, but more or less of a 1 month investment. The outcome was very good. So from a machine learning point of view, from a model point of view, from a validation point of view, it's really good. The challenge is to productize it, because the kind of data that you need, or that you need to go to companies and say, hey, give us access to your, very personal data, or very data that is very central to you for that value, that's also very hard to do. So sometimes just having a good model is not enough. But nevertheless, the amount of investment that we did here to get to that first phase and to get to that first realization, and then looking at our competitors, what they are doing, and potentially doing a similar thing on different kinds of data, that helps a lot. So yes, we still have a challenge, and in every single one of our initiatives we have challenges. But we went to this first realization 5 months earlier. And we were also able to make around it also a little product. I wouldn't call it a product, but that machine learning model is also running in production in a way that you can interact and you can see how does that work. The last initiative, it's also at the top, and I think, and also what we normally say when we say, hey, start here, I talked this morning about being a machine learning engineer, being pragmatic, but you still need to know machine learning. There are more and more services that are commoditized, right? Just an API, just a Google Translate, just a NLP service. And they are getting better and better. So this is another exercise we're doing actually right now with a new initiative that we say, hey, you don't need machine learning knowledge to potentially get to this first iteration. And if that takes you a couple of days or a week, you should definitely do it. And if you have the possibility to deploy that, either in a stealth way, either in an A/B testing kind of a way, and start already collecting data and learning from it, you want to do that as early as possible. Surely afterwards you say, hey, just calling a couple of AWS services and it's not good enough. And you might need to have a different approach, and you might need to dig deeper, and you might need to build your own NLP. Fair enough. But don't underestimate this approach that pretty much all of us can do, and we can already start to see what's our baseline. In a lot of cases, establishing that baseline is already a good step forward in understanding, are we ever going to have a chance? Is that something we can productize, or is that something that it's going to take so long that it's not going to make sense? So yes, this thing here seems in a lot of cases like too black magic, and it either works or it doesn't work, because you don't have a lot of ways to influence it. But just establishing it, just looking at those services, just trying it out, and potentially just establishing a baseline, that is something that I think all of us should do if there are interesting ideas in our products. So that's why I'm saying start machine learning smartly. I'm not saying never do you don't do TensorFlow now at all, or you shouldn't do MXNet, or you should always kind of stay high level. No, that's not true. But make sure that you invest the right amount of efforts for the iteration where you're in. What we're also doing is, we said, okay, we did all of this infrastructure investment. Would be great if we can show some progress on a couple of things. So we said, together with AWS, let's have this fast track initiative so that we take 2 or 3 use cases. This isn't the cheapest initiative, but we take a couple of use cases, focusing on products, because I said this is maybe where we need to accelerate a little bit. And we do them together with AWS. Why is it important? Is that they are not doing it for us. We are doing it together with them. And the last thing is that also maybe I would like to see all of these things, but this is maybe a subjective view of it, obviously. I would like to see these investments that we do in data lake and these investments that we do in our people and so on and so forth kind of coming all together, and with this accelerated track have an outcome 2 to 3 months from now. Probably even earlier. We need about 1 month to get somewhere. And this starts in the next weeks. We have some ideas. If you have some ideas, bring them on, especially. But this is not something, and this is very important, and I'm placing it here and I'm talking about it. What we have to be careful is that we do not use consultants as a crutch for us, right? That we can't do it without consultants. So the other reasons why we do it with AWS, because they don't really want to stay long with us. Because they are interested in selling the platform or us deploying on AWS. That's the recurring revenue for them, not in them doing professional services with us. So I was asking in a lot of cases, why AWS? And that is an important reason, because normally you can start to only feel confident if somebody holds your hand. And that is not where we need to be. If we make this a success, and if we believe it's important for Haufe, it's because we can do it, not someone else does it for us. That doesn't mean that in any case nobody should help us, but there is this trade-off. And it's way too easy to fall on the other side, because it's convenient. I'm talking again about cloud because I think this is also one of the things I'm proud of, but also because it thinks it's something that will, again, as I said, will have an impact in the way we write software in the future and in our speed of innovation. That being said, I mean, some people challenge me that, yeah, but we can do it in another way. We can do many things in different ways, but there are certain patterns in our industry that we see from companies that are successful. And can we do it without cloud? For sure. Can we build everything in assembler? Sure. But there are certain things that we should take advantage of if they are there. And that's the same with cloud. And what we've done over the last years, and with Holger, if you still remember Holger, we went on this cloud journey. Holger was the previous CTO. And we've done and we productize it, right? So we moved from being discovery, we played with cloud for a while, for a long while. We tried various kinds of clouds. I mean, Marco probably remembers IBM Bluemix, right? The TED cloud, and all of those experiments. And now we settled on these two partners, AWS and Microsoft, and then we started having products on them. But what we did, I think, which is important, and that we make another leap. So we made a leap from being in the discovery phase into the productizing phase. We made a leap into the scalable. We want to build, looking into the future, we are building products in the cloud, period. Sure, that sounds easier than it actually is, like with everything in life, but that is something that we want to go to. So one thing that I just want to leave you on this, because I think this will influence our focus as either as engineers or as business, because we have to defend this in a way, and we have to find a market for it, and we have to find the right trade-offs. But there is no longer a ban on customer data in the cloud. So we used this stick for a while to say, no, we can't go to the cloud. Raek and Oliver told us, no customer data in the cloud. That's not true anymore. It was a hard month, but it's not true. So, but nevertheless, out of that, we have an initiative in the business side, in different domains, in different target groups, that we want to have a customer acceptance. What does it mean that from a customer point of view? There is this, I always associate going to cloud with looking back 12, 15 years ago, when we had the discussion between on-prem and SaaS. And, you know, why don't you do on-prem? Because everybody wants that, right? SaaS is evil. It's not in your keller. And if we look now, we understand who the successful companies are, right? So in the same way, if we look at cloud, in a similar way, yes, we have all of those challenges, but I bet you in the future who the successful companies will be. And that is also something, but the reality is that there is this customer acceptance that we have to take into consideration. And we have to do a good job on that. So what we did, there is this awesome process. It's called the Technical Review Board. You've all heard about it, I'm sure. You've all had the pleasure of going through it. But we're thinking about that in a cloud-first way, and DevOps 2.0, and how do you want to do that in the future, so that we're actually not defending against those cloud providers, but we are embracing them. Cloud governance, that is something that Andreas is doing. I just also want to mention that there's a lot of stuff that we need in order to have this scalability. There's one thing to have 3 teams that do cloud. There's another thing to have 400 engineers doing that, and have that in a scalable way, and making sure that not everybody has root all over the place, because we're all doing DevOps. But, and when a customer asks us, what are your processes, and can you tell me who did what when, we're actually able to do that, and we're not guesswork. So all of this is actually, a lot of this is happening with Andreas, and in the next 6 months we're doing it on AWS, and afterwards we want to do it on Azure as well. Yes, this is a grand statement from me, that City Office supports this initiative and want to enable you to do that. Either in new products, in a way new products are easier, but especially there are cases in which we want to transform existing products. This is not a lift and shift. I think we had this idea in mind a couple of years ago. You lift and shift into the cloud, and then it doesn't work like that, because this no-ban lift comes with certain investments that we need to do in the cloud, so you have to change your architecture. In some cases, it's a small change, encrypt everywhere. In some cases, you need to change the way that you use your databases, you need to change the way that you use your events, and so on and so forth. So that needs to be an initiative where we help you out. We're all helpful people. Yes, so that's kind of how as I said, the reason why I'm mentioning that is that it is still something that will influence our ability to do experiments in projects or in products. And even if you're not in the cloud, if you do machine learning and so on at scale, your data will be in the cloud, so then it's already there. And the data lake will be in the cloud, so you are in the cloud. The data scientist path is also, I said, I'll do a little bit of controversy, right? So this is my opinion about it, but it is how I see things as. So we have this role, the data scientist role that I mentioned. This was kind of the Swiss Army knife of everything machine learning and AI. And if you found those people, that was great. That could deep dive, but also connect to business, but also do data preparation, but also deploy it and run it in production, but also awesome. But there actually isn't a lot of them. And it takes a long time for a person to gather all of those skills. So I feel that the industry is kind of moving from this Swiss Army knife. It's trying to kind of go to 2 kinds of roles. I said it's controversial, but placing it here. And we have this machine learning engineer as a pragmatic role that comes more from the engineering side, and doing products and being part of that team, and potentially doing a Docker container here and there, and doing all of those things. And we also have this data analyst role, where the output of that person is more into designing or helping the business strategy. Where should we focus? And the insert here, data analyst, because I thought that no matter what I try to name this role, somebody will have a problem with it. And I think it's also domain specific in a way. You can do that for markets. You can do that for example, in financial services. We have the financial data analyst. NSA has a lot of them, right? And all of those things, people that use data to enable business decisions. The output might be a PowerPoint, the output might be a mash of dashboards or whatever, but it is, in a way, a different kind. They all use the same techniques. but they use it in different ways. And they work with it in different ways. And then, just to support my belief, I found a quote. And it's data science on steroids for Open Credo. And if you read through it, then they also say, hey, these business intelligence analysts, they call it in a different way again. And you have this data scientists and machine learning engineers, and they say that the latter one is more of an IT engineering role, whereas the former one is more of a business focused role. A lot of those, and the idea is that both of these roles are the same side of a coin, or the different sides of the same coin, because they have to work together as well. And I want to kind of leave you with that, potentially push back on it, but it is also going to be the way that I believe there are going to be different paths throughout our organization. Some of you that want to go into this in the next phase will say, I'm more comfortable being part of a business strategy track, whereas some others will say, I'm more a part of a product development track. And you should potentially keep that in mind. I think even today, 80% of the knowledge is the same because you're doing fundamentally similar things, but the way that you apply that and the amount of knowledge and the way that you do iterations and the way that you think creatively around machine learning changes. I said I will be faster, I'm not. It's because of my clicker, it's slow. So I have 3 more slides. But let's go back to being inspirational, or pretend to. And there's 2, if we really zoom out, what happens in our industry is, so I got this article a couple of days ago from some of my colleagues in the business board. And I don't know if you know who said, move fast and break things. 5 years ago, Mark Zuckerberg said it. Not the biggest persona at the moment, but he did. And that kind of embodies the way startups think and the way our industry thinks. So just move fast. There was another quote, I think from Bjorn or someone, that said, hey, if you're not embarrassed about your MVP, then you're too late. Right, that's kind of the thinking, right? Just move fast, just break things, go fast, and so on. Now, you probably know what happens with Facebook with that kind of a mindset, right? And this also leads to Harvard Business Review saying that the era of move fast and break things is over. So, in my mind, then, we have the ability to move back into this being afraid of change, or we have to accept this, but still have this try to find the compromise, try to find the balance between the two. I still believe that we live in a world of tremendous innovation, and that innovation cycle will get faster and faster. But nevertheless, we have to be more responsible about it. And especially with machine learning, AI, and so on, crawling into every single corner of our life, we have that responsibility as well. We have bias in our models, and as they will be responsible for more and more things, we have a responsibility towards our customers. We have a responsibility towards what are we doing with data and how are we using that. We live in a world where we see an IT security break every single week. So our architectures, the way that we do innovation, the way that we create our products is more and more influenced by those things. I've never seen so much influence ITsec and data security has on an architecture than in the last 2 years. We're creating around it, we're creating phases. Oh, now I don't have customers, I can just play around. Oh, now I have my first customers, oh my God. So this all influence, but we have to be careful that we don't shift the dial in the other direction and we say everything is scary right now, we have to stop and we shouldn't move forward. And I think the companies that do this balance and can keep the balance, and they keep their brand, and they keep their things, that's the companies that will be successful in the future. Second to last slide. And there's another quote from Werner Vogels. You might know him, he's the CTO of Amazon. And he says, in the future, all code you ever write will be business logic. His idea being all infrastructure will be owned by Amazon anyway. Right, so you don't need to own a database, you don't need to own, and you see that with serverless and lambdas and all of those services that you just get from Amazon, and you should just write your business logic. Cool. My belief is that machine learning will fundamentally change the way we write that business logic. So there is this statement that I stole from a guy that says, with machine learning, you're not writing the code that tells the machine what to do. You're writing a program that helps the machine figure out how to write the program to do what it needs to do. And that is very fundamental, because sometimes you have no direct control. It's not like automating a process. It's not like someone moving boxes from left and right, and you're just automating that in a much faster way, as we're used to doing. Bookkeeping, HR, and so on and so forth is about teaching a child that is disobeying most of the time how they should behave in certain cases. That is very hard for us engineers to do because it's non-deterministic, and it's maybe hard for us as a business to understand that you can't put a time frame on it because it doesn't work like that. And I think this will really influence the kind of engineers we need to be in the future. Now, will everybody needs to do this? No. But more and more of us and more of our innovation there at the top will be because of this. And as web disrupted the desktop world, as cloud disrupted the hosted world, as this will also fundamentally change the way we do products. With that in mind, I stole a quote from Marco. In an old presentation that stuck to me is that you don't discover new continents without having the courage to lose sight of old coasts. So the ones of you who want to take this journey, the ones of you who want to really look in the unknown, that's the opportunity here. We as Haufe, I think we're also making a commitment, or we are investing into an era, into a phase that with a company of our size, we're normally an early majority kind of a phase. There's also a curve, where do companies jump onto a technology. With machine learning and AI, there is the wish also from the business side, from the holding side, to move just a little bit into the unknown. And that's why this is an investment that we're doing. It's a big investment for a company of our size in a technology that it's not tested all the way through, but we believe this will give us the opportunity or the jump ahead that we need in a lot of cases. And that's also an opportunity for you because the company doesn't do it, you do it. So, thank you very much for coming here and staying with me for the last half an hour. And see you at the next event.